Welcome to session 11, and thank you for staying with me for so long. It touches my heart. It really, really does. Wonderful, guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I told you that we only have the highest quality people coming through, and each person that comes on has to be the best of what they do and to fit a very specific need that we have in our never-ending training sessions with regards to what we do. So I am majorly excited. The woman we have on today is truly, truly special. As you saw in her preview that I sent out on email, she deals with the highest caliber people. She's dealt with billionaires. She's dealt with the top CEOs. She's dealt with the best of the best of the best, senior politicians. She works at the highest level. And we are super, super privileged to have Sally Anderson here today to talk to us. And what are we going to talk about specifically? Well, there's a couple of questions that we need to answer. And it's specifically going to be around that gap that I keep telling you about. So very, very quickly, I know you've seen this 100 times before, and I'm going to show you 100 times more if I have to. This sales conversion gap. Your sales are not going to come to you. Some of them will, but 19 out of 20 are waiting for you to reach out to them. You followed the process. They know who you are, and it's time for you to get out and do it. And that comes with a little bit of fear. So I understand you're a bit nervous. You've got to pick up the phone from time to time. You've got to go, oh man, I have got to now sit down and I've got to go through my links and I've got to click and do the invitation. I've got to do my one-liner and I've just got to sit down and follow that diligence. And I know it can be frustrating, but that is where the money is. The money is in that gap, and you need to overcome the fear. I showed you guys a video last week about the free diver who went through into that little dark box and then dived down and then went up into free fall. That's what it's about. Now, Sally's going to help us today and talk to us about overcoming that fear. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for an incredible ride because Sally Anderson is in the house. Sally, take it away.
Might pay to unmute. So first of all, thank you, Scott, for the privilege to be of service this evening. And great to see so many faces online tonight. I know in my experience with Scott, he only hangs out with the best of the best. So the God in me acknowledges the God in you. So I'm wanting you to leave with massive value. And as far as knowing a few things about me, I'm a coach intuitive. What do I mean by that? I coach to cause, not symptom. So I know there's going to be a Q&A portion. I believe that's going to be great as far as value exchange is concerned. And there are quite a number of questions in the brief that Scott sent to me, and I'm really keen to answer those questions from my perspective. So I'm a dangerous woman to talk to. I listen to your language. The language tells me where I need to go. The language are the symptoms. It's not what's causing it. So as a coach intuitive, I'm interested in dealing with what's causing it so that the symptoms don't keep showing up. And I specialize in what a number of things, but one of them is what I term the default identity. So counseling and psychotherapy psychoanalyze the default identity. I disappear it so that you don't oscillate in between being empowered one minute and disempowered the next. I specialize in what I term sustainable transformation. I don't know about you, but there is a lot of money being spent on training workshops, on cultural change initiatives, on coaches, on trainings and organizations for very questionable ROI back into the business. I've been a course junkie for 30 years. Name a book, a CD, a course. I've read it, listened to it, and went to it. I struggled to sustain the change. So 20 years ago, I wanted to focus on this elusive thing called sustainability, that if you're going to invest money into change, let's make sure it's sustainable. So the focus of tonight, with reference to the questions that have been raised, have a lot to do with fear. And to me, fear is the symptom. It's not what's causing it. So the conversation I'm wanting to have with you tonight, and you'll get used to me, I'm a straight shooter. 9 times out of 10, people have no concept of what it is to be committed. So my focus is going to be on the causal dynamics of what's creating the fear, because if you deal with the causal dynamic, then the fear is not going to show up. Fear is but a barometer of your disconnection from your faith, whatever that is for you. Higher power, universal force, collective consciousness, God. I don't really care what you call it, so long as you hook into it. Have you ever tried to vacuum when you haven't plugged it in and turned it on? It's a bit tricky. So who you are in your human form is limited. who you are in your co-creative form is limitless. So as far as getting on the phone and talking to somebody, I gave up being a human being a long time ago. It's too bloody hard there. But as a co-creative being, because you were born connected, you were born fearless, and you were born intuitive. Your intuition is your GPS system. And the more you listen to your intuition, it's like a muscle. The more strength in listening to it, the more you will receive. And so as far as fear is concerned, I want to focus on commitment. Commitment equals results. Wherever the results are being produced in your life is a function of your current commitment. That can land like a cup of cold sick. I'll say it again. Commitment equals results. Wherever the results are being produced is a function of your current commitment. So most people do a lot of activity in their busyness and think that they're committed, but the results aren't being produced. Specifically in the area of KPI performance, which is an area I specialize in with reference to corporations. 9 times out of 10, 90% of companies on this planet tolerate KPI disempowered cultures. What's the point of having a KPI, a key performance indicator in a business, unless you meet it? The fact that it's tolerated and it's not met is quite funny, given that it's rife globally. So what would it be like if you were to meet target, or what I term quota? I specialize in the number of things is in the area of closing. As far as sales are concerned, the biggest deficit skill-wise in closing, in sales, is the ability to close. You do all of the pre-work, the work that you're doing with Scott at the moment, is all of the pre-work to actually get to a point where you've got the prospect, and then you get to a point of closing. Most people don't have the skill on how to close somebody. So leveraging that skill this evening, for those of you on the call, would also be great to leverage my knowledge in that area. I've coached everybody from every multi-level marketing company to corporations, specifically because KPI empowered cultures is something of interest for me. Obviously, closing is also a passionate area, because when the impact of your inability to close is rife, let alone all of the gymnastics you do in advance of being able to get the viable prospect in front of you. So I've got a few slides that I'm wanting to show you out of a webinar that I ran last year on mastering the art of closing. And is it okay if I share some slides there, Scotty, before we get into answering some of the specific
sure.
questions?
You should be able to do it. Does it let you?
Okay. Let me have a look. Okay. Share screen there with me, people. Alrighty. Moving you around. And slideshow. And play. So obviously tonight, in the context of what I understand you're dealing with before you actually get in front of the prospect and before you actually get to a point of closing, but a lot of the elements that I've highlighted here are pertinent to the whole sales process. So I've identified the impact of 20 things that impacts people's ability to close. I'm not going to go through that in much detail, apart from people are frustrated that they're not able to generate the amount of leads that they've got, get on the phone to make the sales calls. They're in confusion as to what to do and how to do it. They're in overwhelm. Obviously in a corporate context, their fear of losing their job if they're not actually meeting their quota. There's financial pressure, because obviously if you're not generating the sales that you've got, there's obviously going to be financial pressure. There's dissatisfaction with reference to putting in so much activity and not getting the type of return that you want. There's a self-criticism and making yourself wrong with reference to your performance. I'll just move you guys around. There's resentment. A lot of people put in a lot of effort, but they're not getting the results to the degree that they'd like. The thing I love about Scott's process, so I did a one-pager with Scott on the political realm, just focusing on targeting politicians. So I coached politicians for about a 5-year period, returning to that. And it's one thing to actually obviously create the one-liner, to create the one-pager. Then there's quite a bit involved with reference to following through on that process. It's like going to the gym. What's the point of getting the gym membership unless you're going to get your sorry ass to the gym? The work is in getting your ass to the gym, which is that gap that Scotty's talking about. some of the other things that are in the way. Fear and doubt of your ability to be able to do it, hopelessness with the effort that's being put in, not getting the return, resignation, feeling isolated, obviously as entrepreneurs, especially with COVID, you know, there's people are used to being in a team environment. It's not so much the case anymore. What else have we got here? Poor health. You know, if you're not meeting your sales targets, that has a huge impact on your mental health and your state. And so health is a huge issue. Embarrassment, especially if it's in comparison or you're part of a team and you're not performing as well as your counterparts. There's disappointment. Obviously, people buy into failure. I personally don't. You can't fail as a spiritual being. Drive this slide. There's a lack of confidence with reference to your ability. It can go to the area of depression, bankruptcy in a lot of cases. Who would have thought, given the COVID situation? So just for full disclosure, I went through a character assassination back in 2018 after being in operation for nearly 20 years, very targeted attack over 9 months. Then the targeted attack was, we're going to make you go bankrupt, we're going to take you under, which they did in August of 2018. So I've been in nearly 3 years of recovery. Who would have thought that that was imperfection for what I do today, considering the amount of companies globally that have gone through bankruptcy and the amount of leaders globally that are going through character assassination, very targeted character assassination. Not something that I would wish on my worst enemy, but there's certain skills that I have in my skill set now to be able to help people transition. And obviously suicidal, you know, you would be amazed. I did 3-day retreats, leadership retreats at C-suite level for 10 years, 10 months of the year for 10 years. And 50 to 60% of every single attendee in one of the processes that I facilitated around core belief, which is part of my default process, had a belief that they didn't deserve to live. It was running at their core. So I also specialize obviously at the senior level. There's a lot of stigmatization involved because it's not okay at the senior level to talk about mental health. It's barely palatable at the workplace level. So the suicidal aspect is not something that's spoken, but it is rife out there. Not really appropriate for tonight's audience, but it's something definitely that sales has an impact on. However, what we want to focus on is all of the positives. Now, these are all the benefits. So in the context of getting on the phone, following through on the leads and so forth, it's about getting present to the cost of not. Most people are disassociated from the cost of not taking action, not taking consistent action. It comes back to commitment equals results. Wherever the results are produced, it's a function of your current commitment. Most people's relationship with their spoken word means jack shit. They give their word to everybody else, but not to themselves. Getting transformative results is directly related to transforming your relationship with your spoken word, because we fundamentally allow ourselves off the hook. What is it? You know, everybody else is worth it and we're not. You know, what is it about us giving our word to other people and not to ourselves to that degree? So from a causal perspective, most people want to be able to follow through, be consistent, get the results. But the issue from a causal perspective is your relationship with what it means to be committed. Now, in the context of commitment, so many people focus on the nice aspects of commitment, but there's not enough written about the one thing that happens when you get committed, and that is resistance. If you want to produce unprecedented results, it starts and ends with shifting your relationship with resistance, falling in love with resistance. As change agents, every single person on this call tonight is a change agent. You need to fall in love with everything that you find confronting, everything that you are resistant of, everything that you are uncomfortable with. If you want to find the edge, go looking for it. The irony is, when you take confronting action, when you take action that you're feeling resistant, when you take action that makes you feel uncomfortable, living on the other side is actually quite humorous. So obviously in the work that I do, I live in those shoes. I don't want to feel comfortable. Comfortable is not going to give me the edge. So my norm is taking action that is confronting, resistant, and uncomfortable as my new norm, and training other people on how to do that. The benefits are those that I highlight here. You can be self-assured that your success rate's going. There are people out there that literally need your services and you're in the way. So I go, if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for those that are waiting for you. In the context of coaching, especially now with the whole mental health, I say to those coaches that I coach, I go, there are people dying out there that need you. Get out of the way, right? And if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for them because they need you right now. Piss-assing around doing all this busyness activity that's not producing results ain't cutting it, right? So miraculous results, doing things differently. That's the other thing, you know, the old saying, do things differently, get a different result. The degree to which we do the same thing expecting a different result, it's ludicrous. Success formula. When you know what to do, it becomes your success formula. So again, in the context of generating a conversation, it is a profound privilege to be in the presence of another human being. COVID has proved that there has been, the social distancing has created more connection, unprecedented connection that we've ever known as far as humanity en masse is concerned. So the irony, I mean, I've been online for 20 years, so COVID never changed anything for me. I wanted the lifestyle, so being online was my medium. And the beauty of COVID is that it's forced because organizations didn't trust their employees to work out of their state environment. Now they're reassessing whether they'll actually have office premises, which I think is absolutely outstanding. The freedom that you're going to find in your proficiency improving, your increased proficiency and productivity, finding the gold in the evidence. Evidence-based people are waiting for evidence to show up before they trust. Trust and faith-based people implicitly know that if they trust, the reward will be evidence. So sometimes the doubt that occurs is a function of the evidence that's yet to occur for you to actually prove the concept of whether you've got what it takes to be able to meet target, to be able to earn what you'd like to earn. That's a whole conversation again with reference to what is it that you want to earn per month and why do you tolerate not earning it? Man, that could be a whole conversation again. The degree of fulfillment, the being able to work with abundant client set, knowing that your strike rate's great. Obviously, money in the bank account is a bit of a no-brainer. Getting into the slipstream, anything that's in conflict is a function of being out of alignment. How, with reference to your performance, how in alignment are you with your message, with your congruency, with your values and what motivates you? Less effort, working smart, not hard, feeling invincible because the results are showing up and obviously making a profound difference. Those are the key, obviously, benefits of being able to achieve what it is that you're wanting to achieve. I'm more than happy to share this as well. This is the 16 guaranteed elements of mastering conversion, tried and proven. So I had over 100 coaches in my community, trained them in my methodology. This is a quick sheet. It's a 0 to 10 rating, basically looking at what is it that is hindering you. So, you know, most of you are high-level professionals in your career and you're good at sales. That's not in question. This grid is to do with your closing proficiency. So more than happy to share it. And, you know, in a lot of instances, you might be rating 9 and 10, but in a lot of instances, you may be rating really low. Those are the areas that you need to work on with reference to once you actually get the prospect in front of you. Now, this here I wanted to talk about, want versus commitment. Again, most people talk about the positive aspects of being committed, but they don't talk about the reality. 80% of people who you're talking to on the phone, they'll say that they're not ready or they're not interested. 80% of people on the phone will say that not now. 80% of people on the phone will say, well, look, I'll follow you, but I'm not ready to purchase. So really, as far as conversion is concerned, you're only looking for the 20% who are actually committed. And as far as being on the phone is concerned, my entire focus, because I own who I am and I own what I do, which is another conversation again. If you get on that phone, you don't own who you are, you don't own your message, you don't own what you're doing, don't pick up the goddamn phone because they'll smell it and they'll read it. There's one thing to know that you're powerful and know that you're good at what you do. There's another thing to own your presence and command. I'm a teller. I've earned the right to be a teller. So I don't ask anymore, I tell people. and they listen. They sit up, shut up, and listen because I tell them, because I'm commanding the space. Do I occur as arrogant? Yes, but there's a positive aspect to one's arrogance because my intention is very clean. I'm only interested in working with people who are committed. So step up or step off. So there's no such thing in my book around rejection. You know, the perception of, you know, anybody who's in sales. I'll just get out of this so I can actually see you again and bring you back. Sorry. Stop share. 2 seconds, people. Stop share. Yeah, so in the context, if you're owning who you are and you own your presence, nobody can reject you. A no is almost like, do you know who the hell you're talking to? Do you have any concept of who the hell you're talking to? Now, I'm not expecting people to take on the Sally Anderson way here this evening. However, you do your version of that. When you own who you are, energetically, it has a huge impact on the outcome. Being a teller in sales is fantastic. And I think most of the people on this call have been there and done that. And I think you've earned the right. There's a way in which you can communicate to obviously command a response that you're wanting. I mean, I was on a call the other day with somebody, same spiel for 10 minutes. And at the end of the spiel, she said to me, do you know how many coaches I know? I said, I'd probably hazard a guess. She runs a community of 30,000 women in America. And she said, out of what you just said in that 10 minutes, I'd get on an airplane and I'd come and meet you in New Zealand and I'd actually sign with you as a client. And I said, well, my intention isn't to sign you as a client today. So I parked her. Now, cut a long story short, I've generated her to get 50 of her top leaders from her community in front of me. I told her. She said, I'd love to interview you. I said, I'm not interested in you interviewing me. I'd love to put you in my newsletter. I said, I'm not interested in showing up in your newsletter. She said, well, what do you want? I said, I want you to find your top 50 leaders in your organization. Some of them like G8 level, you know, head of the leadership council for Harvard. Now we're talking. She went away, put 50 people in a room. On the 8th of July, I've got a 3-hour masterclass to deliver to those 50 leaders and have generated $500,000 in follow-on revenue because that she's going to assist in fulfilling. I've gained real clarity with her. Why am I sharing this story? I spoke my passion. I was commanding a presence. I was in telling mode, and I told her what I wanted. I don't know what you're getting from this conversation. And obviously I'm interested in interacting and actually finding out what's there for you with reference to what it is that you're dealing with, because obviously a lot of the questions that Scotty raised, I'm keen to actually answer those specifically. But out of what I've shared to this point, commitment, if you're going to take anything away from tonight, there's certain things that need to shift as far as fulfilling on the process with being part of this community. One is transforming your relationship with your spoken word, transforming your relationship with what it means to be committed. Commitment equals results. It's such a simplistic formula, but such a powerful formula. If you think you're committed, but the results aren't being produced to the level that you're wanting, I'm here to tell you, you ain't committed yet. Because to be able to achieve those results, you have to transform your identity as you know it, which is why I specialize in the default. The default identity is there to sabotage. Sabotage is a function of keeping yourself safe. But in the world of being a change agent, we're not interested in safety. There's a lot of little boys, little girls running businesses, if you haven't noticed. And if you're hanging out in any level of perception of fear, fear is but a barometer of your disconnection from your faith, whatever that is for you. Fear is but a function of being disconnected, feeding a past and or future-based projection. You're disconnected. You're either feeding something out in the future or you're feeding something in the past. There's no validity to it, but the validity to which you're given it. I wrote a book called Free Fall, Living Life Beyond the Edge. Most people are they're wanting the free fall experience, but they're holding on to the edge of the cliff. A bit tricky, right? In New Zealand, they started bungee jumping in 1987. I was one of the first to do bungee jumping in New Zealand. I've done 17 bungee jumps. The beauty of bungee jumping is that, you know, they count you down, then you got to jump, right? The free fall experience is in business is all about the inner game. Fear, you know, you were born fearless. That was your birthright. For those of you who have children, you see it every day. if you're a change agent, I am a fearless practitioner. The things that I've experienced in my life is beyond comprehension. The fact that I've survived and I'm here to be able to pay back and assist others on being able to lead a fearless existence. I am one of the most fearless practitioners on the planet. I'll go to places other coaches won't go to get results other coaches won't get, hands down. And being able to partner people to lead a fearless existence is a priceless vocation. So in the context of what it is that you're experiencing, being able to get a sense of humor, because the perception of what's dark is actually the light. I wrote an article today on embracing uncertainty and the free fall experience. I write articles on a weekly basis on evolving leadership consciousness and mindset mastery. And a lot of that article had to do with what Scotty shared about that phenomenal guy who does deep diving, and also my take on being able to free fall in business. The amount of the difference you can make in people's lives by giving them access to you, by being present. It is a gift to be able to get on the phone to you. It is a privilege to get on the phone to you. How dare you rip people off by selling out to this perception of fear? Without that sounding like a sermon. Scotty, talk to me. Throw me some questions. Let's get specific on some of the answers to some of the questions and tell me what's resonating right now.
Beautiful, Sally. Yeah, it's. I'm sure you guys are starting to understand where this is fitting in now, and why I'm so passionate about bringing Sally on board. And what I'm going to do, Sally, is bring in the questions with also giving some of your quotes back to you, if that's all right. So, for example, the first you talked about being present to the cost of not. So, in other words, if you're not going to do it, guys, what's going to happen now? As you guys know, you guys are all sitting in a situation right now where you guys, with the exception of possibly buying the app for $49, there's no money in the training that you're going through right now. I'm not making any money from you now. I'm not demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever like this, because I understand that the world needs to have small businesses that just do it. And you guys have come this far with me for a reason. And that reason is that there's a shared bond and a shared connection that means we have some kind of journey to go together. Now, yeah, what I want you guys to experience is I want you guys to experience that free fall, like in the video, so that when you touch off, when you touch and you can land, you can feel what it's like to fly. And if you don't know how much it's costing you not to follow the process, and you guys are so close, remember what I'm talking about, guys. I'm not trying to sell you my process because I'm not making any money from you. So it's clear. What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to experience what it's like to have that free fall and take off by getting on the phone, following up, using that concept. So Sally, have I explained being present in the cost of not in today's context sufficiently well?
Big time. And I'll give you an example. God knows how many times I have to learn this one. I had the ex-CEO of Warren Buffett contact me on LinkedIn, and we had a fantastic conversation. And it was, one of these things is not like the other. Anyway, we agreed to exchange books and that we'd regroup. And I never heard from him. And I followed up and I followed up and I followed up, and I got a bit pissed off and thinking, it was such a magical call and he was such a great contact. I really questioned why. And I was about to write him off and take him off the lead sheet. And then I get this absolutely amazing email from him saying that he'd been sideswiped, he'd been in a car accident, and that whilst he was in hospital, he was reading my books. Now, did I feel like a bloody heel because I was making him wrong because he hadn't come back to me? What did I learn in that? Regardless of how, and he acknowledged me for the amount of times that I contacted him and followed through, and it really displayed to him my commitment to our relationship without sounding like I was a stalker. Rule of thought with reference to what it is that you're talking into, there's a cost to making things mean something. And if you're committed and your intention is clean, with reference to following up on people, staying committed, staying the distance, it is a function of obviously your commitment. And I'm catching up with this guy on Saturday, but it was a good reminder for me with reference to the cost of making things mean something, making it, we don't have the time, so somebody said no, it's almost like when somebody says no to me, which is very rare, I find it funny. I'm funny. It's kind of like, because I only want to work with people who are committed. And if you haven't noticed, there's bugger all people on the planet who are committed. We're in the 1 to 3%. You're in the 1 to 3%ers crowd, and if you haven't got that, get with the program, people. Right? 1 to 3% of people truly are that committed to do what it takes as an entrepreneur. You know, I salute every single one of you because it takes something. You know, if you want to transform your identity as you know it, become a friggin' entrepreneur.
That's a great quote. Someone write that down. If you want to transform your identity as an entrepreneur, or if you want to transform your identity, become an entrepreneur. Brilliant. Okay.
Default identity.
Default identity. Thank you. Okay. And I'd love to hear, I mean, I'm sure you need to talk about that at some point as well, Sally. I know you can talk for days. Right. Fall in love with resistance. Fall in love with what makes you uncomfortable. Guys, I know what you're uncomfortable with. And I know the part that you're uncomfortable with is actually the part where your money is right now. It's in that gap. It's basically a factor of two things within the process. It's number one, it's doing your follow-ups and writing those messages that I taught you how to write, because you know what to do. But it's also, secondly, a function of getting on the phone and phoning them just before that period where you're fully comfortable. They're not going to book a Calendly call directly into your calendar. It might happen occasionally, and when it does, it's amazing. But you've got to take that step just before that process, and then you've got to go into free fall. That is specifically why I bought Sally today. So your resistance to do that needs to become your best friend. That fear of not doing that process needs to become your best friend. Sally, have I explained that correctly in the context of today?
Energetically, like money is energy. Energetically, you need, if you're energetically putting together the script and you got a bit of attitude going on, altitude is the outcome. Aptitude is knowing that you got the ability to achieve it. But sometimes if you don't sort out your friggin' attitude, right, with the minutiae of stuff that we need to do in order to get a result, that energetically has an impact on the outcome. So sometimes you need to sort out your stinking thinking, with reference to, getting the result. You need to get into the slipstream, to get into the portal, to get into alignment. Everything, if you haven't watched Finding Nemo, all the turtles are all over the place, and then they get into the slipstream, and then it happens with ease. When you have an attitudinal shift and you love writing that script, you love picking up that goddamn phone, bring it on, baby. I train people to be a 10 every day, whatever, how many books do we need to read that say, be careful what you think, your thoughts create your reality? What they friggin' will do. I'm unconsciously confident in being able to sustain living at a 10 state, living at an equanimous state, equanimous leadership, co-creative leadership. From my perspective, 10s attract 10 experiences. If you're hanging out in a 2 and you're wondering why things are showing up out there, one finger pointing out, 3 fingers pointing back, 24/7, the gratitude of getting out of bed in the morning, the gratitude of being an entrepreneur, the gratitude for being able to serve people, the gratitude to be able to impart your wisdom to other people. The gratitude is missing sometimes, people. What the fuck?
Yeah. There are people out there who need your services and you're in the way. Guys, that's amazing. That is exactly what the process that we've gone through has taught you thus far. You've gone through this process so far because it's soft and it's gentle. They're not going to click on your captivating one-liner. You're reaching out to specific people who have that pain point. So when you do eventually get on the phone and you have a conversation with them, it's going to work. It's one of two outcomes. Either they're going to say, I can't talk to you now, in which case you're going to book an appointment down the line, or they're going to have a conversation right then and there. It's unlikely that you're going to have that rejection, but the fear of that rejection is so unbelievably great that you're not even doing the process in the first place. So that notion of you being in the way of people who really need you right now. And I've had this conversation with several of you guys offline already who are on this training, where they've said to me, I have so much value to offer these people. And I'm like, well, why aren't you speaking to them? And literally haven't gone through the process enough. Well, I'm waiting to kind of learn more, go through all your courses, and then I'll do it. That's great, but this course training never ends. So you're never going to do it. So the point at which you get out of your own way needs to happen and happen relatively quickly, in my opinion. Sally?
Yep. There's a cost. People are disassociated in general. COVID-19, over and above being a viral pandemic, there has been a fear pandemic, obviously highlighted by the media, but the schooling system keeps humanity numb. And I think COVID-19 has been is one of the most exciting times for people in business. If they, I hate the word pivot, but if they truly understand what's possible. But again, it starts and ends with your level of commitment. And somebody in the comments in the chat, said either step up or step off. It's not everybody's game. It's not everybody's game to transform people's lives. It's not everybody's game to be an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong in being unwilling to.
Looks like Sally has.
In my world, to achieve the results to the magnitude that you would like.
I just dropped off internet for a second there, but I did think we caught that. Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to achieve unprecedented results is a function of dying to your identity as you know it. The person who picks up the phone and loves it, the person who has joy with writing the scripts, the person who converts on the phone, that person, that's a different identity to somebody who's not doing that with the consistency. So if you're not focusing on what beliefs are you running that are hindering you from being able to completely transcend, it starts and ends with your default identity as you know it.
Amazing. So you see what's happening, guys, and this leads into the next bit, which is I'm not an asker, I'm a teller. And this goes exactly into the way you do those professional insight messages. So remember, I spent a lot of time showing you guys that we've got to stop asking questions and being and take away those little pieces of the messages that are fluffy or almost second guessing ourselves. People don't need people who waffle around and fluff around anymore. People are looking for people in their business that come on and they make direct statements. They tell it. Now, I know what Sally means. Obviously, you've got to ask questions. You've got to become a diagnoser in the process. But I know exactly what Sally means. And that is when you have something to say and when you get it, you need to go after that. You need to take it. You need to take a bite of it and you need to consume the whole thing because that is who you are and you've got to keep going. So when you make those statements, when you know what that person is going through, when you understand them well enough and you've got their LinkedIn going, you've done your research, make that statement about their pain. Make it. Don't ask questions. Don't be fluff. Make that statement and tell them what their pain is back to them better than they know it. Because that is going to open their eyes and go, wow, I need to speak to this person. Sally?
This is probably going more into sales and closing, but it does have relevance. For example, falling in love with objections is something that I find interesting in the context of sales. Because I never allow somebody to raise an objection with me. Because my entire focus is, are you committed, yes or no? Yes or no facilitation is very, very powerful. So are you committed, yes or no? Because if they're not, what the hell are you doing sitting in front of me? If they say that they are, and then they try and raise an objection, then it's incongruent. So yes, no facilitation, very powerful if you're taking on a telling style. You ensuring that they're on your court all the time and never getting onto their court. That's very, very important in the context of being able to close somebody. That example that I provided before, that woman from the time she was on the call was on my court. Example would be when I'm on a sales call, I never go first. I always facilitate a conversation for the individual to go first so that I can understand the landscape of what I'm dealing with. I can listen to their language. I can ask as many questions as I like until I'm ready to finish that part of the process. So then I'm well versed to know where I'm going to navigate my conversation customized to the requirements of the prospect that I'm sitting in front of. So at every stage of the game, they are on my court. I'm in that telling mode. Obviously, I'm managing how I'm communicating, what it is that I'm communicating so that it's landing without annihilating the hell out of people, because on my style, people are rather intimidated or they can be kind of like put on the back foot, but you can make that work to your benefit. Whatever your style is, it comes back to that commanding a presence so that they sit up, shut up and listen to you.
Wow. And this is something that is so important. And it's important for you guys to realize that you would not be in business right now. You would not own a business, run a business if you weren't really, really good at that little piece of what you do. You won't be on this course. You wouldn't have come this far. There's something specific that you do that you are so good at, and you are going to be better, much better than your prospect at it. That is what you can own. That is what, when you get in, you put them onto your court. And I think that's brilliant. I mean, Dr. Sally, I think you've explained that amazingly. And I just want you guys to know that you would not be in business if you didn't have that ability. You have it. It's there. It's just a case of finding that groove. And it doesn't matter if you're an introverted and extroverted personality. And one day, Sally, I'd love you to talk about that. Different people feel, well, I don't have that personality. I'm not a Scot who talks with his hands and can go on stage and da-da-da-da-da. I'm not a Sally who can do this. I'm not a this. And before you know it, you've just mentioned everybody else in the world. I'm not them. And then at the end of the day, you're the only one not doing it, which is ridiculous. So you do have that. It doesn't matter what your personality type is. So this goes into the default identity. Just explain that. The default identity is safety, something like that. Just explain that quickly, please, Sally. What does that mean?
Just to speak into the introvert and extrovert, I'm actually an introvert who's trained herself to be an extrovert. So you get the best of both worlds. Safety. So this is only my opinion, so take it for what it will. But having coached tens of thousands of people, I've got a good case study. So if you are in a disempowered state, or if you have the inner critic running, you have the little version of yourself running the show. So you're either operating from the child or you're operating from the adult. If you're operating from the adult, then you're in the empowered state. My job is to have you sustain being in the empowered state all the time. But as I said before, there's a lot of little boys, little girls running businesses. And 9 times out of 10, that if you are not consciously aware of the reason why you are not taking the action, you can always link it back to childhood. It's hilarious having coached at CEO level for God knows how many years, and the CEO will always say to me, Sally, why when I've come to see you about my business, are you talking to me about my childhood? I go, here's the deal, mate, I didn't design it, but beliefs and values are adopted in childhood, some negative, some positive. They then form the behaviors then form the structures. Every single house has a foundational structure, every human being has a foundational structure that then forms the culture, who you marry, how you dress, where you live, and then that forms the results. If you're wanting to achieve sustainable results, you need to go back and do some rewiring in the original programming, just like a frigging computer. So the default programming is not serving you. Some people are conscious of it, some people aren't. But 9 times out of 10, the number one reason why you're not taking action is that it ain't safe. And you can always link it back to childhood, people, always. So as a high recommendation, if you haven't done the inner work, mastering the inner game, of being able to build resilience, it starts and ends with childhood. Sorry, but it does. And 9 times out of 10, investing into doing work about some of the beliefs that you got going on will serve you well in your business, because that's the thing that's actually sabotaging your potential. It's always linked back to childhood. So the safety dynamic, as far as the default identity is concerned, is if we have in the study of ontology, the study of what it is to be human, they distinguish that there were 3 incidences of a negative nature in your childhood, proven, every single human being on the planet, between the ages of 3 to 5, 5 to 12, 12 to 21. The education that I provide is awareness-based training. Once you're aware of it, you can do something about it. But see, if you're not aware of it, those incidences, you will continue to find evidence to validate that identity as you know it. And it's always negative, which is where all of the inner critic beliefs come from. So being able to collapse that and make people aware of it and such that they transcend their identity as they know it and no longer operate from the child is part of the work that I do at a very senior level. Because, an example would be healing. There's not one boardroom on this planet that doesn't need healing as a number one strategy, because there's a lot of unhealed leaders leading organizations, highlighted even more so due to this pandemic that's going on, because leaders traditionally are used to being in control. It's unprecedented, their ability now to navigate uncertainty, and that's not a familiar territory for them. So in answer to your question, Scotty, safety always has to do with childhood. And 9 times out of 10, little boys, little girls are running businesses now, and they're not present to the cost of that.
And that leads perfectly into the final point, Sally. You were born fearless. That is your birthright. And again, that's another of the majestic Sally Anderson quotes for today. And this notion that you're born fearless, that fear is something that is bred into us. And, you know, I'd love you, if you're willing, to maybe touch on a little bit of the Maori's take on that, because I know that is an very interesting subject as well. But this notion of being fearless, and what does that actually mean? And it's just, and being in that moment, because again, guys, I just want you to know that we're coming down, this is a huge topic, right? And it all comes down into, at the end of the day, you're sending out a couple of LinkedIn messages, sending out a few invites, going through the process, sending those messages in a very specific way, and then getting on the phone and having a conversation. I mean, it's like taking this huge, incredible discussion and putting it down to a couple of simple steps. But I know that's where your money is. And I know that most of you guys are not doing it. And that is why I'm taking so much time to really iterate this process. Sally, you're born fearless. That is your birthright. Tell us.
I'm going to do a bit of context. So without wanting to slam dunk you at with the time that we have left, but it'll provide context. So I was abducted and gang raped when I was 15, one of the most worst reported gang rapes in the history of New Zealand in the early 80s. Abducted by a notorious gang, over 100 gang members involved, thrown into a butcher's block, raped from every orifice, left for dead. Abducted, taken to another location, rapes continued until I was found. Go back to school, act like it didn't happen, but it did, and then lived into a good few decades of trying to put the pieces back together. So I didn't go to motivational courses to get motivated. I went to motivational courses to try and work out how to get to the next day. Now, the reason why I'm sharing that is I didn't come willingly to teach how to lead a fearless existence. I had to learn it in the trenches. And I can look at the mongrel mob as my spiritual initiators for what I do today. That I can shift anybody out of anything. Live coaching is my thing. Throw anything at me, any place, anytime, anywhere, and anything. And it is a profound privilege to spend the rest of my life over and above those that I've had the privilege to coach, to have them realize that what you perceive as dark is actually the light. And my latest life apprenticeship experiences of character assassinations and bankruptcies and so forth, I don't think there's much that I haven't experienced where I've learned to transition, where I've learned to come out the other side and be able to teach people that your fear is, the level of the fear that you experience is relevant to the degree to which you've healed yourself. So I've done the work and I continue to do the work. And whether you want to call it self-actualization or reaching a level of what I term equanimity, the ability to be able to impart wisdom to people, specifically in the area of fear. I've gone beyond the comprehension of human terror and come back of my own accord. So I didn't need to go to university and learn a friggin' psych degree. So most people are very, very fearful of a lot of things, but it is the number one sabotage mechanism in your business. So the number one recommendation, and if you're resistant to it, then it's the right action to take. You know, every day in your business, if you're taking action that's not making you feel confronting, resistant, uncomfortable, you're never going to get the edge. You're never going to get that exponential growth that you're wanting. But if you become masterful in falling in love with being confronted, falling in love with being resistant, falling in love with that dimension, watch out. Fear is but a projection. So one of the processes that I use with people is about training yourself to be present in a connected state, being able to, all of human suffering is a function of what you make things mean. You cannot suffer unless you're making something mean something. And by crikey, we make stuff mean something in business with reference to when we're not getting results. The results will be directly proportional to you transcending your default identity as you know it.
Wow.
How you like them apples?
Sally, yeah, you're a hugely special person. Thank you really, really so much for sharing, contributing as always, constantly giving, and just constantly in service to humanity and the planet. And I hope that you guys here today are equally as appreciative. Sally, I'm going to stop the recording now. With a couple of minutes left over, and then I need to do a hard close. But, you know, once again, for those people who want to contact Sally, we'll get her details. You can obviously contact her through me. We'll get hold of her details. But at the end of the day, guys, what we're trying to do here today is make a difference in the world and help you guys in that very specific niche of helping you guys achieve what you want to be able to do. Now, you followed this process because you believe in a process. Now it's time to make that process really happen. Once again, Sally Anderson, love you. Thank you.
Cool bananas.